Friend Info Adventure Co. is an immaturely mature podcast. Content warnings can be found in the episode description. I don't think there will be many content warnings in this episode, but you can check those out just in case. Welcome back. Today I am going to do another bonus episode where I'm chatting with somebody who has worked, with the Gearbox, with Borderlands, the related. This time, though, I am chatting with someone that lies to people for a living. He uses his voice to manipulate people into feeling what he wants them to feel. He may charm you, break your heart, make your skin crawl, make you cry, make your eyes roll, or make you laugh. And guess what? He gets paid to do it. To say these terrible things and great things. And you may not recognize his speaking voice, but you may recognize him as someone you know. Someone like Denny from Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Take your pick. I love both equally. Kong, Vander, Decken the Ninth, Nola, and Gordon from One Piece. Oscar Mike, Whiskey Foxtrot, Isic, Minrek from Battleborn, a variety of voices in many anime and video game projects, and various characters in almost all of the Borderlands games. But maybe most notably to our audience, he has annoyed a lot of them as a funny little robot named Claptrap. Jim Foronda, how are you?
I'm doing well. That was quite the intro.
Of course, they'll only hear the edited part. So, edit it down, make it sound so professional.
Oh, trust me, I know. That's what auditioning is like. We'll have like the perfect take and then you'll flub one word. Yeah, and then you just kind of like, I'm just going to cut that out and then attach it to the second part. But yeah.
Yes, lot of mix and matching, right, of takes.
Yeah, I learned the term Frankenline of stitching together bits of lines from Raleigh Pickens at Okratron 5000. That was way, way, way back. Oh gosh, I think literally working on, I think it was Borderlands the pre-sequel.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, that was my pre-Claptrap days. That was when I was the Doll Corporation.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Yeah, we're gonna get into voice acting for sure. But first, how are your cats?
Oh, my cats are fine. Gosh, the oldest one, Beanie, Takubean. All of our cats have Japan-inspired names. Beanie, or Takubean, he's black, and he's a Manx. And the reason why we called him that is because if you look at the old Yamato Transport shipping company logo, it's like the mother cat holding the kitten. The kitten doesn't look like it has a tail. And and I thought, that's Takubean, which is delivery. And so that's how he got his name.
Cute.
He has kidney disease, so he's been kicking on the prescription food for like 3 years. We've lost cats to that before. It's something like statistically 1 in 5 domestic house cats develops kidney disease just because of, I guess, like just an evolutionary defect in where they are right now in their chain of existing.
Yeah.
But he's a good boy. Second oldest is Momiji, he's our first orange cat we've ever had, and of course Momiji are the maple leaves. And then in fall they turn this lovely orange. Then our pandemic kitten who showed up on our porch, completely abandoned, October 2020, black and white. And by that time, everybody we knew had already adopted their pandemic pets, so we couldn't find a home for her. So it's like, surprise, we've got a third cat, black and white, tuxedo, and I named her Ikuruga after the treasure shmup, where it's a game where everything is either black or white. Your ship can flip over and change from black and white. Basically, opposite bullets will damage you and damage whatever you're shooting. Like here's a barrage of white bullets, make sure you flip the ship over so you match colors, and then the white bullets will just pass through. And then there's bosses that will flip color and stuff and everything. So black and white.
Whoa.
That's how she got the name. And so Ika, we call her that. And the most recent kitten that we have, my wife and I had recently, literally a year ago, last March, we took a trip to Japan. It was that post-pandemic. We'd been saving up before the pandemic, and then a lot of the money saved up went to like building a home booth so we could work from home, or I could work from home. And so then over the course of the pandemic, we saved up again, went to Japan, tangent on a tangent here. But there was a feral cat that we were trying to catch before we left on the trip and we couldn't. In our jet-lagged stupor when we got home, we managed to catch her. And my wife has a friend who has a barn and basically has like a little fostering cat set up. So we took her to this barn. 24 hours later, she has 4 kittens. We are able to home 4 of them, the 3 of them. We tried to find a home for the 4th. That didn't work out, and we ended up keeping him. So his name is Minobu. He's named after a town that we really enjoy visiting when we go to Japan. We've been there twice now. And he is striped. We almost called him Lawson because the Lawson convenience store uniforms are striped. So yeah. But Minobu is his name. So our cats are fine.
That's awesome. Love to hear it. We got an orange cat last year. And when we were adopting him, the store clerk, whoever it was, the person working the booth, whatever, they were telling us orange cats are very stupid. They're the dumbest cats. And we were like, why would you tell us that while we're like going to adopt this kitty? We still adopted him. And he has lived up to that. He is so smart in so many ways, but he is also so dumb in so many ways. But I love him so much. Have you noticed that with your orange cat?
Miji is he is an idiot. However, the thing is, the sentence "orange cats are stupid" it's a true sentence, but you could swap the color out with any breed of cat because Miji's long haired, so he's oh gosh, just try to this Poofus. And there's Doofus, which is the Ika's Doofus, and then with Minobu, we just call him Boofus. You know, they're all dumb. They all have they are all smart in certain ways. They all have things that they are very clever and very smart about, but they are all very, very stupid.
Yeah. That makes sense. We have 3 cats, and I would say that about all of them too. They all do really dumb things sometimes, and sometimes they do really smart things.
So they are all dumb in their own ways, and they're all smart in their own ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Love it. So, sweet. Well, now that we got that out of the way, because I know people were wondering, I was at least, being a big cat fan, we can talk about voice acting.
Sure.
How'd you get into it?
Oh, boy. Well, it's a story I've told often, but for those who might not know, I used to work in advertising. I worked in advertising, from 1997 to 2013, like employed by advertising agencies in that space of time. I worked on Hasbro toys from 2001 to 2013, up until my layoff. And in the early part of 2000, they were relaunching G.I. Joe, the 3 3/4 inch figures. They were like a Target exclusive for a while, but then they're going to do the full thing. And we did a computer animated spot, and it's going to be like a movie trailer. There's lots of rules about kids advertising, but if you don't show the product, if it's just movie trailer, then you can be more elaborate with what you're showing off. So this is about the characters. And the producer that we had, it was a newer producer, and did not take into account the cost of having union talent. To give you an idea, Mark Hamill was Duke in that spot, but it never aired because, surprise, there's not enough money to pay the union talent. So everybody got their the usage fees, like the reuse. So everybody got paid their SAG mandated session fees, and then this emergency recasting of all the voices. We all piled in the booth, everybody in the agency. We didn't even slate our names. We just read for all the characters. And so Hasbro, unbeknownst to them, cast me as, British Reporter, Duke, Destro, Cobra Commander, and Heavy Duty. Heavy Duty was fitting since I was the brownest person at the agency. You know, it's like it was... but yeah, they cast me as those characters, and when they found out it was me, they were like, "Oh!" And so I did a lot of VO for Hasbro. It's what's called scratch love, where if they like the way, they kind of fall in love with the way the person presenting the spots, or the scratch voice as we call it in the rough cuts. Well, just use that voice. That's how I ended up also being Optimus Prime, Megatron. I was Unicron in one spot. They just use Foronda. But one thing about that Unicron spot, it was for the is that Armada or Energon? I think it was Transformers Energon, the first big Unicron toy. And I did like this read. I did an Orson Welles inspired read. And they're like, he doesn't sound scary enough. And so it was like, okay, here's generic. It was like, I don't know. It's
It's like adult scary versus child scary type of thing where like Orson Welles can give you that like haunting chill, but for a children's toy, it's more like, no, it needs to be like scary.
It was perfectly fine in the 80s, but it was interesting. It was Hasbro had folks that there were people who were really, really into what it was that they were selling, who had love for the properties that they were working in. And there were some brand managers that literally, I just came over from New Balance and I could sell anything. I don't even know what toys are. There was one brand manager who literally flat out said, I don't even like toys. When I heard that, I'm like, but I don't even know if that person still works there. I had my favorite people to work with at Hasbro, and there were other people where it was like, well, you're the client.
Yeah.
Golly, it was fun working in that. And other times, 60 to 70 hours a week flying into Boston Logan and driving to Rhode Island twice a month. I don't miss that.
Yeah, that sounds rough.
It was a very long point in time in my life. I'm proud to say I wrote 10 years of Transformers toy commercials. I loved it, but near the end, it stopped being fun, and I was hoping that fun would come back, but they got like a new CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and they wanted to go back to an earlier agency, and we lost the business. Our agency upper management, I will say that they were like, oh, we were completely fine with having this one big client. We have golden parachutes. We don't need to worry. And so when we lost that business, like 80% of the agency got laid off. And we were a small agency, so that was like literally everybody.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying. But when you write for toys, people think, well, all this person did was write for toys. We don't want to hire him. Even though before working on that, I wrote for like a ceiling tile company and Nokia and a bank, but it's all they saw was toys, and nobody wanted to hire a toy writer. So it's like, well, I'll just do freelance and I'll try voice acting full time. And that's how I ended up getting into voice acting.
That is awesome. Do you know Rob Davio? I think he worked in advertising for Hasbro for a little while, but he also like made Pandemic Legacy, those series and any Legacy game that they did, like Risk and. So I bet he worked for Frankel. We replaced an agency. Okay.
And they were the one that replaced us like 13 years later.
Oh.
Yeah. And then from what I understand, Hasbro ended up dumping Frankel because they're like, we're just going to take everything in-house. And that's when toy commercials got back to Hasbro's best thing ever. It was toy advertising's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of this you're going to cut, but there are so many rules to children's advertising. It is insane.
Yeah, things that you can and can't say, like, or the way you say them. Is that right?
Yeah. For example, you can't say transform Optimus Prime into a truck. You have to say you can transform Optimus Prime into a truck, because if you just say to do something, then the children. This is the theory: is that children feel like they have to. You have to give them the option. You can never just do it. And so we kind of would abbreviate it. One time there was disc jockeys. A lot of times, disc jockeys have those big, bold voices, and I would be directing them. And you can do this, and it's like we don't have enough time for that. So I was telling him, I'm like, seriously, you could just throw that away. You could transform Optimus Prime, and he's like, you can transform Optimus Prime. I'm like, oh gosh, how can I? I tell him, okay, so literally write this in your script. Write down YOUK''N. You can. And he's like, and he's laughing. He's thinking I'm joking. And he's like, you can transfer. It's because disc jockeys, they enunciate and they're very clear. Everything is very well spoken. That's the training for being on air. For some of them who did not also regularly do commercial work, it was really hard for them to loosen up and be more natural in their speech, because they're trained to have that jockey sound, that DJ sound. I always respect people who can go from vocal style to vocal style. It's kind of like shonen anime where everybody talks like this. What is he doing? He's powering up right now. You know what I'm saying? There's a sound. There's like Dragon Ball. That's there's anime that kind of thrives. It builds on that sound. But then you have drama, live action dubs where it's more natural. Like, God, he's powering up. It's one of those things to where, some people, if they've been trained in one thing, it's hard to get into to develop your vocal style into a completely different line. Like it was hard for me to get into that shonen style until I realized, okay. It took a long time for me to go, okay, this show gets that style, whereas this show has your more natural reads. Because coming out through advertising, I was more of a natural delivery type of person, and my brain was always trying to say, no, that sounds too forced. Relax it, because you're trying to sell a product. It was Joel McDonald who told me that when we were working on Borderlands 3. I was curious. I was like, I was asking him about different. I can't even remember what the question was. Because they said there is a style that you want to have that shonen anime sound. It's actually desired. My brain was like, really? And when he told me that, it was like a switch flipped, and I started landing more roles at Funimation at the time because of that. Because I knew, I was like watching different shows and stuff, and I just picked up, okay, that is this type of show. And then, the more work you do, you realize this is definitely going to have this delivery style. This is going to have this delivery style. And sometimes you could be way off, but I don't even know how I got on that tangent, but there you go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was talking about DJs, about you can transform Optimus Prime. Yeah, I was like, how did I, when your train of thought just goes off in a completely different direction, and then it derails, and I'm like, how did I get to where I am now?
Yes, that happens to me all the time. Or sometimes it happens in my head, and then I'll just say wherever I end up, and my wife will be like, what are you talking about? I'm like, because we were talking about, like, how did I get there?
I'm glad I'm not the only person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happens to me all the time. And sometimes it happens in like just a fraction of a second, and you just say this thing that took like 10 links to get to, right? With that, did you just put together a reel, a demo reel, and then find an agent? Do you find an agent first and then put together a demo?
Well, I know a lot of my colleagues, they'll get demos made. They'll have advertising scripts made, and they'll record a demo, and somebody will put sound effects and stuff behind it. Sometimes there are services that'll do that for you, and sometimes people will do it themselves. Coming from advertising, I was lucky enough to have actual produced work. I also had some when I was writing for Pizza Hut Field, which is like not Pizza Hut corporate, but like the regional, this franchisee in Walla Walla, Washington, that type of thing. It's scripts like that, Pepsi scripts that were never produced, but I read some of those, and I had the Hasbro work that I'd done, and I put that together in a reel. It was another producer who said, you could get paid for this and do it on the side. And so I did that, and I asked, from what through your casting and stuff like that, to this producer, what is the agency I want to start at the first one. What's a good agency to go to? And he said the Mary Collins in Dallas, and so I submitted that reel, and they accepted me, and they said, yeah, we'll represent you, and I've been with them ever since. The first thing I ever did, it was a concession stand announcement for a local high school stadium, because Texas football is, it's where they'll pay like millions of dollars for like a high school football stadium.
Of course.
Yeah. They needed blah, 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 something Coca-Cola, get a nice cold Coca-Cola at this, the concession stand. That was the first thing I did as a independent professional voice actor. And first thing I ever did for Funimation, I was in Case Closed. That was back before you auditioned from home. I had to drive out to Funimation in their old building in North Richland Hills, in a bank building. It was like 4-story bank building. It was like bank, lawyers and anime, and then lawyers on the 4 floors. So it was like this. It was a half of a bank building floor, and yeah, I auditioned there. And first role was a gold digging husband who gets super murdered on a cruise ship for Case Closed.
Super murdered. He's just like a bloody heap on the floor.
That's
incredible. Would that be the equal of like the intro of, like a Law and Order, where it shows the person going about the day, and then all of a sudden they show up murdered, right? Is that the equivalent, or
Well, it was a two-parter. It was Smooth Sailing. That was when stuff was super localized. Nobody kept their Japanese names. It was aired on Cartoon Network. It sets up the story. Here's the family. Here's why Conan and everybody in his group are on the same cruise ship. And I think the patriarch dies, and then everybody's who's in the will. I think I was the second person murdered. Several people got murdered on that trip. Yes.
of course, as they do.
Yes.
Is there a difference in how you approach video games and anime?
Well, not really. It all depends on specifically what the property is. If it's an anime based video game, then what kind of a show is it? What is the sound of that IP, that property? What are the characters like? Is this a serious character? Is it a silly character, fun character? So you approach a role that way. And in the case of Borderlands, has a certain style. Battleborn had a certain style. Smite has a different style. You approach every role individually because there's so many different styles in everything. Let's look at it this way. I recently watched a video on the making of Alien Isolation a while back. Alien Isolation and Borderlands, two very different styles of acting. So you would approach both of those very differently.
Yeah.
I'm not in Alien Isolation, by the way. It's just a favorite game. So
Nice.
It was one of those things that popped up on your YouTube recommended for you to watch. Ooh, I loved that game. I'm going to watch this documentary. So yeah.
When doing anime, you're probably always dubbing. Is that fair to say? Like you're doing an English dub of an existing anime, or do you ever do like you're the first person to voice this role?
Oh, well, anime is well, yeah, we're always dubbing because it's
specific to
Yeah, I have done prelay animation before.
Oh, quick question, side thing. What does prelay mean?
Prelay means that is where you're recording and then they animate to your voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's you're literally it's the prelay. You're laying it down before the animation is done.
That makes sense.
First animation I think I ever really did was technically I was still working for Hasbro, but it was for Spy Troops, G.I. Joe Spy Troops. I was Dr. Mindbender. I guess technically the first time I ever did anything prelay was for those G.I. Joe commercials. And then eventually for the G.I. Joe movies that they made for the CG animated movies. Spy Troops was the first CG animated. They actually aired it on Cartoon Network, if memory serves. And it was included as a DVD in the Ninja Showdown 12-inch figure set. Side note on that, the commercial for that we filmed in the old Ion Storm offices at the top of Texas Commerce Center because they had like a really, really cool like office set. And the 12-inch figures, you could actually have them like just close enough to the camera and you have to have the hand so you could see that it's not moving on its own. Again, another child legal thing. You have to make sure that the kid knows it's not moving on its own. And so it's filming that in the old Ion Storm offices. It was kind of crazy because there's still stuff sitting all over the place. The empty Daikatana box, in one office. It was just weird.
Huh. When you're doing a dub of, English translation, are you listening to the voice and trying to mimic it at all? Or do you get to just kind of build the voice as you see it? And the, company that's hiring you?
The tonally, you'll listen to the tone of how the actor's delivering the sound. In the early days of animation, doing anime, my voice is pretty versatile. I kind of typecast myself as a character actor. So I would get called in, like, for example, in Dragon Ball Super, the director for Dragon Ball Super would call me in. I need you to be this ramen chef. I need you to be this foreign dignitary from another planet that looks kind of like a lion, but he's very, very graceful. I need you to be these two tall, skinny security guards. Knowing that I could do all those voices and make them sound different, he saved me for that. Like, I would never get a main role because I need Foronda to basically do all these crazy things because I know he can make them sound different. So I would listen, what does the Japanese sound like? And I would try to do an English version of that. There are a couple of times where some things change a bit. Like in the anime, Trapped in a Dating Sim, the world of Otome games is tough for mobs. I voiced Luxion, who is this isekai's the world's most powerful microtransaction. And the Japanese he's more expressive in a sense, but for an AI, for the Western audience, people think of AIs as being more like, for lack of a better term, Siri, I guess. So Luxion sounds more like, "That's more like you, master. You are a heartless abomination." His original assignment was to destroy all new humans, but because the main character is clearly not, he's been isekai'd, so he's clearly not part of this line of humans that Luxion has been built to destroy. He essentially becomes like the property. He's the microtransaction that the main character, he sequence breaks the game in the isekai world, and he now has Luxion as his assistant, his sidekick, his underling, his microtransaction. And Luxion is very passive aggressive. It's almost like Isic in the sense where Luxion always sounds very calm, but through his pauses and the occasionally he'll sound joyful. And that was one thing that we like to sneak in there. When he finally gets to launch weapons and stuff like that, he's like firing missiles. He's really excited. And I love that character. Sounds very different from the original Japanese Luxion, but the personality of the character is still there. We wanted to match the intent of the character, even though our voices didn't match. I think even though it wasn't the exact same sound, that was one of the times where a different sound can be beneficial because we're sticking to the character, but the dub voice fits the character as well. It's interesting how that works out.
It's interesting because it really is kind of about the tone or the intent, right? Like you can have a deep, dark voice, or you can have like a higher pitched voice. You can do the, different inflections, but like you can, as long as you can feel that intent.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if Luxion sounded like, "Oh gosh," I mean, that would be totally wrong.
Yeah. So I love watching and listening to interviews with other actors. I'm not an actor. That's fine. I've heard like a number of actors talk about how they come up with some of their characters. And I think one of the interviews that sticks in my head the most is Dana Carvey. I'm pretty sure it was Dana Carvey, how he will describe being like, "I'm going to do like 40% George Bush," and he does like a dial thing, like 25% Jimmy Stewart and just a dash of Robin Williams in there, and that's how he builds his voices and his mannerisms. Do you do anything like that for your process? Is it kind of impression building, or do you just build them kind of from scratch?
I guess you could say I do build them from scratch. When it comes to actually doing character voice first, sometimes I'll teach a class on character voice, how to build character voice. And there is a saying, doing impressions will not get you into voice acting, which is true in the sense that, if you go up and say, "Hey, I do a great Vegeta," it's like, well, we already have a Vegeta. We don't need that. But by doing impressions, by mimicking those sounds, by trying to make those sounds, you learn what your voice is capable of. You learn the musculature of your neck and how you can change the sound of your voice. So once you do that, then you can come up with new sounds. If you could make a gruff Vegeta and you can also do a good goofy voice, what if you take those two aspects and then blend them together and make something new out of it? So that's what I'll teach people. There's that air conditioner sounds weird. What is the sound of that air conditioner like if it could talk? It's stuff like that. But when it comes to creating a character tone-wise, one of my favorite stories to tell is Muscular in My Hero Academia is a character with zero redeeming qualities. He is a terrible, terrible person. He will murder parents, and then meeting that orphan later on in life, will make fun of the orphan for being an orphan and how he killed their parents, and then try to kill the orphan.
Oh boy.
He's terrible. And he's just a cocky son of a gun the entire time. And I based him on the tone of my 7th grade bully. I remember, I'm just going to call him Jason. I'm not going to call him by his last name because I like to think that maybe he might have grown out of that and turned into a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Maybe. He had this super condescending, just a heartless tone. And I put that into Muscular, along with this voice. I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe you really think you're a hero." Yeah, it was, and I added that arrogant, self-assured, "I'm better than you" voice to the character. And there was something extraordinarily cathartic to when he gets smashed into the side of a mountain, because, at the end of watching that episode, that is my 7th grade bully getting punched into the side of a mountain. And so it's fun being that villain, but it's also fun to see, it's the feeling of your bully getting punched into the side of a mountain, specifically my bully. And it was, and here it is, it's like, Jesus, it's like 30, 40 years later. It's like, finally, it's, I kind of grab, it's like pulling stuff out of the air in a sense. It's, what is the, who is this? What is the inspiration behind this character? Where do they live? Oh, it's a world full of pollution. Maybe, he's not very smooth. Maybe he coughs a lot. There's a little bit of gruffness there. Are they kind? Are they mean? There's so many different things that you can pull from to make a character. I remember auditioning for Isic in Battleborn. I think I had I don't do this anymore because it's overkill. And this is in my early days of auditioning from home. I think I submitted like 5 different voices, and they were all different. And they ended up picking what I call the Folgers coffee commercial voice, which is, we've replaced all the coffee in this fancy pants restaurant with Folgers instant crystals. Let's see if anyone notices. And it was, they just went with that.
That's amazing. I can totally hear that too. Like, you can hear Isic saying that. I just replaced this coffee with poison.
Yeah, it was just using that kind of like that delivery, but with the lines that they gave me in the audition sides. That's in case you ask, audition sides, that's what they call the audition scripts that you get.
Oh, okay.
The little excerpts, sides. I don't know why. I don't know the etymology of using that word, but there you go.
That is interesting. Because I know when they're casting roles for movies, sometimes they say, like they give a fake name, right? Or a fake role, but really they're casting Han Solo, whatever it is. Or, they're casting the lead with that type of name. Do they do that with voice acting at all? Do you get just like fake lines, fake roles?
Yeah. It's kind of funny because they'll have like code names and stuff like that.
Code names is probably the better way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll have code names, and if you're pretty versed in video games or in a specific genre of video game, I'll look at it, I'll go, I know what this is. And then there's one I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I'm getting a chance to read for this. And read for it. I know for a fact I didn't get it. It's like, oh man, I would have loved to have been in that. But then there was one time where it's like, I know exactly what this is, and I read for it, and I didn't think I was going to land anything in it, but by golly, I did. And I can't talk about it because it's still under NDA.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah, but it's sometimes you'll have no clue. You'll have no clue, but then you'll look at the code name and go, I know what this is. I mean, they should really code name stuff like, broccoli, and then that way, a lot of times code names are like, I see where you're going with this code name. I know what this means. Everybody knows in the early days of Gearbox, all of their code names, like way back, were trees. Like Battleborn was Poplar. Yeah, so it was like a new game for Gearbox, Poplar. I'm like, oh, okay. It was before the game even had a name, and that was back when Oscar Mike was Chuck Abrams. His name was actually pending. They were going to change that, and they changed. Actually, it was changed. The decision to make him Oscar Mike was during my first session with Aaron Lindy. He's like, yeah, he is going to be Oscar Mike. So Aaron Lindy was the writer. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Working on that game was just working on Battleborn spoiled me for like every video game session afterward. I gotta tell you, man, recording with Gearbox is just, it's always fun.
That would be amazing. I feel like it's like everything I see behind the scenes, people talking about it, like it's just a place where people love working together and are super passionate, right? Like just coming together and being friends and family type of thing, right?
It is. It's really cool.
Very collaborative, which I'm sure that a lot of video game companies are that way, right? Because you've got to be a good team and be able to give that feedback to each other and be friends and spend all this time together. And I don't know, I see it more with Gearbox, probably because I'm more obsessed with their games. Bad or good guy voices? What do you like doing more?
Oh gosh, bad guy or good guy voices. That's like picking a favorite. That's what people say. Who's your favorite Battleborn character? It's like picking a favorite child. Oh gosh, bad guy or good guy voices. Okay. I will put it this way. It depends on the character. For example, if I love Muscular because he is so terrible.
Yeah,
he's just and he's gosh,
he's like fun to hate, right?
Yeah, he's fun to hate. Like he's I try to make him as terrible as possible. And so then, the louder that an audience cheers when my villain gets punched into a mountain or punched across a drainage river, the better it is. But then, I like playing heroes. I like playing Oscar Mike. He's a good boy. He's that's tough. I think it depends on the character, and each character is different, whether they're good or bad.
Totally fair.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a big non-committed both on that one.
I figured it would be that way, but like some people I think have a preference of being, like they love to be that bad guy, the Ben Linus from Lost, just love to be hated because their acting is so good, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about, video games, Borderlands and Battleborn and all that. But like when you get those roles, you've already auditioned for some of them, or a lot of them, I assume, right? But do you see like the character model and start building from there?
Yeah. Sometimes if you're lucky, you get a character model. For Minrek, there was none.
Makes sense.
It was sometimes you don't get a visual at all, and you just go for it.
So your first game with Gearbox was Brothers in Arms, Earned in Blood, right?
It was, oh gosh, oh boy. I was multiplayer character A, I think, in the first one. I get the three.
Okay.
There's Brothers in Arms, Road to Hill 30, and then Earned in Blood, and then Hell's Highway. I get the chronological order of those mixed up. I remember for the second one, they lost some files for a character, and they brought me in to be a sound-alike because I guess I did good doing the sound-alike. But then while trying to find, I guess, a reference file, they stumbled across, this was at a vendor studio. It wasn't actually at Gearbox. And so they actually found, these are the files that we were looking for. I'm like, so I guess that's it for me today. And they said, no, we've got this other character. How's your British accent? I'm like, I hadn't studied for it. I hadn't crammed for it. I'm like, okay, I guess. And so I do this British tank commander, and it's terrible. It is terrible.
Did it make it in game?
If it made it into game, and it's funny because if you went to the IGN strategy guide, and it's like they would put a title for each chapter. This, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter whatever, village and weird British accent. Like literally, that is the name of their strategy guide chapter, and it's just like, oof. So I am the weird British tank commander because I was like, okay, and oh God, just anything. There's anything I wish that. There's things that I wish I could either re-record or just go back, and that's one that would be like, oh boy, weird British tank commander. Yeah, so that was my second, I guess, role for Gearbox, you could say. So yeah,
okay. That's amazing. So did that kind of give you the in for later for like Battleborn and Borderlands? I guess Borderlands was before Battleborn. So
no, I remember. I auditioned for Borderlands before the style change, like way back. Oh my gosh! Apparently, I was the second choice for something. There was whoever was like they had like a freelance producer that was working with them at the time, and he was like, oh yeah, you were their second choice for this. I'm like, that doesn't make me feel better. And so I ended up coming into Borderlands for Zombie Island of Dr. Ned. I was Jethro Shedd. I was Dirk Smallwood. All echoes. Hank Reese, macaroni hat wearing loving father who turns into a wereskag. I didn't do the wereskag voices.
I was about to ask because there is the wereskags in there.
Yeah, I was Harry, who was like the Shaggy knockoff with his hiding in a barrel. And I was the voice of that Jacob's vending machine that was glitched where it only worked once, and then you had to. I wonder if they ever patched that.
I think they patched it because that's the last DLC I was playing actually a couple weeks ago.
Yep, I was the voice of Jacobs at one point in time. So then in General Knox, I was the voice of the Atlas drones. I was the voice of the Atlas Corporation. And I was the Ice Cream Day soldier who sings Ice Cream Day when they're talking about the access codes. You left them at the world's largest bullet? Ice Cream Day was the first time Gearbox had me ad-lib a song. Like, the lines were there, and they said, just sing it. I'm like, okay. And I sang the Ice Cream Day song. And boy, howdy, I've been singing in Gearbox games ever since.
Do you actually sing, like, in real life, I guess? I don't know.
I'm not a trained singer, but I could carry a tune. I'm somebody who will karaoke sober. I enjoy singing.
Oh, nice.
I did do a series of children's videos. I was the dad. I was supposed to get it was like a solo number about like building a treehouse or something with my tools or something. It was like two different parties were like, I guess the whole thing ended up falling apart. So we never went past like the first few videos. I was part of like the Christmas video, but I never got my own solo song. I was very sad.
Oh, hey, well, onward and upwards, right?
Yep.
so with Battleborn, one of my favorite games, I'm so annoyed at the world for its treatment of Battleborn because it's genius. The game is amazing, perfection. I feel so guilty about well, not guilty. It's the thing that haunts me is that on my Xbox, I have one achievement left on Battleborn.
Oh no! Which one is it?
It's finishing the first or the final level in the story. You have to complete it in a certain amount of time, like complete that first section in a certain amount of time on the hardest mode.
Oh.
And I never could get it. Yeah. So it like haunts me to this day. But I also got to play with Gearbox people on that one.
Oh.
I was just playing by myself online, not on that level, but just PvP. And all of a sudden I got like paired into a team and everybody on the team had the Gearbox logo, the Gearbox stuff on there. Yeah. I was just like, whoa, oh my gosh, I'm playing with like, people that work at Gearbox. I don't know who they are. I took a screenshot, so I probably have their gamer tags still saved somewhere.
Oh my gosh, I wonder who you were playing with. Okay.
but it was so fun. And I ended up being like the MVP for the two games. Like I got the most kills because I was like, oh, I got to impress these people. So I took Arendi, who's my favorite. Arendi's just amazing.
Arendi's my favorite, not me.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Arendi is incredible. I love Arendi. Yeah. Like Isic is right up there with Arendi. So you did Isic, Oscar Mike, Whiskey Foxtrot. Like, how was it working on Battleborn?
So here's the thing. I'd been voice acting on the side at my advertising job from 2004 until I got laid off in 2013. And when you get a layoff from your career like that, and you're a type 1 diabetic with and you're losing your health insurance, and it's just kind of like they say that the stress levels, losing like your job, getting laid off from your job is like it's up there with like death of a family member, and it's bad. So that was in September of 2013. I'm doing some freelance jobs. I'm doing some VO work, and the auditions come through for Gearbox's next game, Poplar. Everybody had and Oscar Mike is there. He's Chuck Abrams. And I auditioned for that and was cast in the end of January. I think February was like the first session. And I recorded on that. I'm like, wow, this is great. I think it was maybe the third or fourth session. Maybe it was like the first session with Isic. I'm in the booth and I'm thinking, I'm doing this. I'm a voice actor. It was the first time I literally felt legitimately like, this is my job now. This is my career. I'm doing this. And working with Aaron Lindy and Randy Varnell, the whole Gearbox team there, it spoiled me for working on any video game ever since. It was incredibly collaborative. Isic's line, "I'm so angry I could punch a kitten," for his Respawn line, because he was writing he was writing for 30 characters. 25 characters at the time. And sometimes he would be literally coming up with taunts and stuff like that in lines, Minrek, Be Reborn as lines in session. And he was open to, because we've been living those characters, we've been recording them so much. He was open to us like ad-libbing. And so we were doing Respawn lines. I got one. And this was with Momiji. And, I will, threaten the cats, but Miji, get off I will punch a kitten. You need to get off the mantle. I would never punch my cat,
Right.
But that was the stage that he was in when we were recording Isic. And I said, I am so angry I could punch a kitten because it sounds awful. And it's something that Isic would do. And so, and Aaron laughed. He's like, that's going in.
And it's so Isic.
Oh my gosh. He's got, Isic. His delivery comes from when you work in advertising, and sometimes, there are clients. There's one client who was just awful to all of us. He was awful to us. He was awful to the people that worked for him. One of my coworkers said, did he read some super macho book about management where you just belittle everybody? And so, but when you work in advertising, you smile and like, okay, yeah, we'll totally get right on that. And so for Isic, that core of deep down, you just want to say everything you want to say, but then he's programmed with that consumer facing voice. And so he's like, I'm just going to let everything out, but I'm going to say it to you in a very nice way. Yeah, he was a lot of fun.
Did I say the quiet part out loud type of thing, right?
Yeah, Isic says the quiet part out loud, and sometimes he has to get bleeped out for it.
Yes.
It was Battleborn, 2.5 years. Worked on that for 2.5 years.
Wow.
It is very special to me. I'll be at a convention, and occasionally a Battleborn fan will come up and say, hey, do you have any? I need to make a Battleborn print. I really do. And they'll say, do you have any Battleborn merch? I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't. But it's like, I was in Galveston at a convention, and it made like the community rounds, like posts of the Oscar Mike, Shane and Norrock's wedding cake toppers. I don't know if you ever saw those. And it was Oscar Mike in a wedding dress, and like that hull paint, the hull paint smear on his face, the lipstick. And I was like, this is amazing. And son of a gun, the groom in this wedding party brought the actual cake toppers for me to sign. And I was like, oh my God, I am tearing up. I get really emotional when Battleborn fans come to a convention that I'm at and they say that I'm a huge fan of Battleborn. And it's like, it means so much to me. Battleborn's very important to me and on so many levels. And it will always be those characters, even though the game is like gone, those characters will live in me forever.
I'm glad that you love it and it comes across so well, like, because that game was absolutely incredible. Like, not to bash any of those other games that came out around the same time, but I genuinely tried the other ones, open to them, but Battleborn stole my heart. So my Twitch skills are not Twitch, meaning not the streaming service, but my Twitch skills are not. I'm not fast. Yeah. Battleborn was like multiplayer where you could apply strategy, and I could play PvP. It was fun. I got my first kill yourself message once. Oh, no.
My one and only kill yourself message. I was getting Kelvin's lore where you have to play multiplayer. Oh God, what was it? And then God, somebody was like, why do you play Kelvin? Blah blah blah, kill yourself. I'm like, and I'm just trying to get his lore. And I'm just being as friendly as possible in response. And it was just, why you got to be like that? I remember, and I'm sorry if this is bringing up any loss that you have. The last thing I needed to platinum the game on the PlayStation was I needed to get Galilea kills with Umbra. And I was playing that, and I was playing with, my group. And when I got that last one, and boop, boop, platinum trophy. Yeah. It was just, oh my gosh.
That's amazing. Yeah. It feels so good, right?
I loved that game. I loved playing it. The one character though, that I could never, I was terrible with Benedict. I was like, Benedict.
Oh, he was tricky.
It was just, I think, cause yeah, my aim with the rocket launcher was just terrible. It was just, I love Benedict as a character. I do not like playing him because I am useless.
Yeah. That's how I had the exact same situation with Kelvin where I was playing PvP with him and I got a message after like 2 games of him that was very, very mean, right? Like, you are the worst, like you're dragging our team down, kill yourself, that kind of stuff. And I was like, I'm just trying to get the lore. Like, I know I'm not good at Kelvin. I don't understand how to play him right. And then the next game I switched to somebody I knew better. And I was, I had outperformed everybody else on the team, and then he quit. Like, he was like, oh, never mind, I'm gone. But Kelvin was tricky.
Yeah. I gosh, one of my favorite lines is, I don't know how this works, actually. Personally, and I haven't verified this, but a lot of the moves that we got when we were recording PvP, because we recorded all the PvP lines first, and sometimes like the move set was not done at the time because we recorded really early, and so I'm betting that there was a description of what Kelvin's attack was, but I'm thinking Aaron may not have actually seen it or really had an idea of what it was supposed to be. So I don't know how this works, actually. I think I'm betting that's Aaron going, I don't know how this works, actually. And he just like wrote it down. It's golly. He was so awesome to work with. Man. I just remember adding my own Minrec shopping cart with a wobbly wheel. That's me. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And I remember at the very end that I got to write Oscar Mike taunts for, when he's juggling the loot stuff, the loot packs. I didn't even know that's what the animation was going to be. I just was like, hey, can I write I'm going to write some taunts and just throw them out there, because they were like, we'll throw, if we like something, we'll animate it. And it was, go back to camp, go back to story mode and farm loot packs, pal. It was and then he spikes one of them, and it's just
man,
Oscar. Oh gosh, everything about that game was just amazing. I remember workshopping how all the different mics were going to sound. That was a whole day of not even recording. It was the Randy Varnell, and I think it was it Sam had just moved from Boston, and we were sitting down how all these different mics sound. And I remember how was Queen Mike going to sound? And I was like, oh God, find me a presidential speech. Find me one of President Obama's speeches. And because Obama was president at the time, and it was and that whole the way any presidential person talks, and just combine that with a mic, and there you go. I loved it.
I feel like Gearbox, at least like from stories I've heard in 2 and Battleborn, but they encourage ad-libbing and will use those types of things. Like I think for Handsome Jack, he had ad-libbed quite a bit of stuff too.
Oh yeah.
Is that generally true?
Sometimes like if a line has been sent to localization where it's already locked in and like you can't change it. There's some ad libs. For Borderlands 3, we were pretty much locked to script simply because the script was massive. They had, oh my gosh, the stories behind that. They had in the years in between, there was lore in strategy guides. There were comic books. There were, interviews with Anthony Birch where he would say, oh yeah, well, this is something, something, something or other. And they would have to go back and go, okay, so he said this, so that means this in lore. And it was basically creating kind of like a story Bible of that. There was just so much material that they had to place all that stuff in. It was a Herculean task. And I know there are a lot of people that were just like, oh, it's meandering, and where does it, the story's so big, and there's a lot went into that. It was kind of like no matter what they did, somebody was going to find something wrong with it. Somebody somewhere. And I enjoyed it because the people always say, oh man, they just came up with, Maya's funeral, afterward. I'm like, no, Maya's funeral was cut. It was one of those things that was just cut for production costs and time and stuff like that. And it was like, it was not something that was thrown in to placate the audience. That was a thing that was actually cut. And it was just like, it's kind of like if Borderlands 3 story-wise, it was, oh gosh, there was so much that they had to try to fit into that game. And it was like it's for me, coming from seeing the story from the inside, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally get this. People interpret things differently in every way. And it's like, and there's the way, when you put any sort of creative thing out into the universe, you have your intent, but the way people are going to interpret it in so many different ways that it's kind of like, I don't blame people for like interpreting it differently, but man, people are just mean online though. It's like, so much work went into that, it's like, anyway.
Yeah. That breaks my heart. I think it was so good. I think the story was good. Yeah. It was long, it's just, that's the way games go. We have more capacity for things. But
Yeah.
so we like fill that, and people expect a bigger game, right? Like, I thought the writing though was really good overall. Like, I actually loved the story. I think the Calypso twins were well done. The voice actress for Tyreen,
Elisa Melendez, PhD, Dr. Elisa Melendez.
whoa, I did not know. PhD. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, so I think I was following her on Twitter, and it made me fall in love with Tyreen even more because of her passion for Tyreen, and like, was awesome. I think she made Tyreen even better by her like online presence.
There is, here's, it's very subtle, but Tyreen and Troy, they're streamers. They're like IRL streamers. You know, they're like, people say, oh God, they're so annoying. Well, they're supposed to be annoying. They're supposed to be like the irritating guy, you know, yelling horrible things on a train in Japan. They are terrible people. But when you get to the end, and I'm saying spoilers here because if you haven't played it by now, but there is one line where she's yelling at Typhon. I can't even remember the line now because all I felt was like the emotion from it. There is in this one line delivery, there is an entire childhood growing up feeling neglected and unloved and kind of trapped. And she just unloads all of that emotion in that one line.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and even thinking about her delivery in that, it still gives me chills. It's like, it's up there with, you know, when story-wise, it's like when Captain Picard loses his freaking cool. Like the first time you see Captain Picard, who's been the most reserved, got his shit together person in the entire Star Trek universe, when he loses it on the holodeck in First Contact, and it's just like, that's every time I see that scene, I still get chills because it's the acting in there is just like to see that character just completely out of what you're used to. Yeah, and when Elisa delivers that line of it's the echo casting persona is gone. The villain persona that she's been projecting is gone. And it's all that anger unleashed on her father. And it's that one line delivery that makes the character work for me.
I totally, even as you were describing it and I was picturing it, I'm trying to remember exactly what she says, you know, it's, you know, like, you trapped us here, or like you were afraid of us, or whatever it was. But like, yeah, same chills. Like I'm getting those chills just being like, oh my gosh. Like
another part of Borderlands 3 that I really loved, Handsome Jack. Clearly he has some issues, but when you find that little alcove where Angel was like, and you hear those echoes of when Jack was a normal father. And you hear, there's this one segment where he's like, he gets unreasonably angry at a vending machine. And you hear that he has issues. He's got anger issues that you see eventually evolve into Handsome Jack, who he becomes. But this is back when he's still a normal father. And it's like, that is, well, I was at Youmacon with Damien. I was like, man, that was good. And he's like, thank you. It was still Handsome Jack, the character, but it was a part of him that you had never heard before. And it was this beautiful bridge from like the loving father that he used to be to the megalomaniac sociopath that he became.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I love it. Handsome Jack, we can talk lore here, I guess, you know, whatever. But like Handsome Jack has his reasons, right? He's a bad guy. Sure. Maybe. Who knows? In the end, who's to say? You know, he views the Vault Hunters as bandits, which Vault Hunters aren't good people. They're paid to go around and kill people and steal things and hunt vaults, right? Like you're going around and doing jobs for people, and some of them are not noble jobs. And even like backstory stuff, right? Like Zane is an assassin. He's not like he's just killing bad people as an assassin. You know, like, so Handsome Jack has his reasons, you know, he thinks he's doing it for the right thing. He's not the greatest guy. Nobody's perfect, I think, you know?
Yeah.
And who knows? Like, I think one twist that would be great is that it's, you know, like Handsome Jack was right. You know, like he might have been going about it the wrong way. He might have gone too far, but like overall what he was doing was right for preparation for what's to come type of thing. But you know, I don't know.
I like it when villains aren't like cartoon pastiches of evil. You know what I mean? That's why I loved Rendane. How everybody was terrified of him, and like, please don't kill me. It's like, well, why would I kill you? It's like, oh gosh, it's like, and he didn't understand why everybody was so terrified of him, and it was and then at the very end he comes back and just hi, and
I think the Joker is one of the only characters one of few characters that gets away with, like, you don't necessarily need a reason to be the bad guy, right? Like, you're just crazy or whatever.
Muscular is like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I like killing people. It's as simple as that's the only reason. I have no redeeming qualities whatsoever. That's Muscular is one of those. But My Hero it's a comic book show. I mean, he is the cartoon pastiche of evil, and by putting like that real life bully into him, it just makes it work. When you've got, sometimes there is a place for those archetypes, those I am 100% evil with zero redeeming qualities archetypes, right? But I do like it when villains have some depth to them, because it makes the stories interesting in that sense. Oh gosh, see, now it sounds like cartoon villains are not interesting, but I think it's fun when the villain that you love to hate is suddenly, it's like, oh my gosh, Jack really did love his daughter. He did love Angel. It's like, it's one of those things to where you're like, oh my God, yeah.
You even just saying that, right? The password, I love you. And it's like, I just want to cry. Like when you're going to the bunker.
Yeah, and the plushies and stuff like that, and it was just, oh man, yeah, it's
heartbreak. So tough. Let's get back to you though, but like with that same line of, like, villains you like to hate, people love to hate on Claptrap. People think he's annoying, right? Like, but there's also a lot of depth to Claptrap. So let's talk about Claptrap. Voicing him and your thoughts on him.
Oh boy, voicing him. I will say that going into the Claptrap role was terrifying.
Yeah, taking over from David Eddings, right?
Yeah, and it's I put it this way. I came into it knowing there are people who to this day will never accept me as being Claptrap, and that's fine. David is, in James Bond terms, David is the Sean Connery Claptrap. Mikey Newman was Claptrap for an event at PAX, so he is the George Lazenby Claptrap. That makes me the Roger Moore Claptrap. Now, my stepmother, this is my stepmother, and then when she says, Sean Connery is James Bond, Roger Moore is the Saint, Pierce Brosnan is Remington Steele. And that's and if she listens to this, which I'm sure she won't, I'm sorry, Jerry, that's just me imitating your but it's but she's, she will it's like she will watch, she would watch other James Bond movies, but son of a gun, only Sean Connery is James Bond.
Yeah. And people feel that way, yeah. Like I can hear the difference between you two. You're not doing a perfect impression of him, and I don't think it's supposed to be. Hopefully you'll be filling this role for multiple games, and you should be able to make it your own.
It was interesting because in the beginning, it was a 7-month long audition process, and it was, I think they were just culling things down. And at the time, I didn't know what was going on. I still don't know the whole thing. But for Borderlands 2 VR, I had to record the new lines for how to use the move controls and stuff like that, the VR controllers, and so I had to get as close to him as possible. And then for Fight for Sanctuary, Commander Lilith and the Fight for Sanctuary DLC, it was like, okay, stay as close to the original, but loosen it up a bit because this is 7 years later. And then when it came to 3, as Joel said, don't worry now about mimicking or trying to sound like David. This time, just be Claptrap. It's kind of like Chris Pine being Captain Kirk in the Star Trek movies. It's like he's not imitating William Shatner.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing a Shatner impression, but he's being the James T. Kirk character. And it's kind of like, I approach Claptrap as the socially awkward member of the Crimson Raiders. He so desperately wants them to like him, but I basically I use my at the time my recently discovered fact that neurodivergency. Oh, that's why I had difficulty making friends and stuff like that when I was like really little, and I still feel kind of awkward talking to folks when I meet them, and it's I put that into him. He just he hopes he's saying the right thing, even though he himself, and this is something that like I would do as a child. He really, really wants them to like him, even though he himself was a vault hunter at one point in time. He's surrounded by people that he sees, they are heroes. They've done all kinds of amazing things. So he likes to talk. I was going to say, can I swear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He likes to talk shit. He makes himself all big when deep down inside, he knows he's just, because he just wants them to like him. And one of the saddest things in the beginning of Borderlands 3, there's a line where Lilith says to the player, I know Claptrap can be a little claptrap, but still, he's one of us. And the sad part is, he doesn't realize it. He doesn't realize that they accept him. And he's a good boy. He just doesn't know how to talk to people. I love him. I love him as if he were like my own son. I always say that I call the Battleborn characters my children. And, for the first few years, I called Claptrap my adopted child. But it's like, but then I don't even use that modifier anymore because, he's become my child. He's had multiple fathers, but, I am taking care of him now. And, Jack Black is taking care of him for the movie.
Yes.
On my first day, I was really nervous. I remember it was Randy Varnell that said, if people hate you as Claptrap, you did a good job. If people love you as Claptrap, you did a good job, because he's supposed to be annoying. But it's kind of funny because I can hear it. I'm sure a lot of people who hate me can hear it. But it's like I can hear from me, because I can remember being so nervous on that first day. I can hear it in my performance, personally.
Interesting.
And it's because I get so much more comfortable as him throughout the course of the game. The last things that we recorded were the Claptrap adventures, and when he's actually playing Bunkers and Badasses when he's teaching Zero how to play. And when you listen to those, by that time, I've been recording him for months. And throughout the course of the game, I get more comfortable as him. And by the time we get to like the DLCs, oh my gosh, the wedding, Guns, Love, and Tentacles, that's what he's talking about, going on his own adventure. And he names the color Blarf. And it's just, by that time I was just like, yeah. And in Wonderlands, he is my son now.
That's one of my favorite bits in 3, is that him, coming and going on his own adventure, and you hearing kind of about it as you go throughout the DLC, right? Like, or is it's not just one spot where he talks about that, right?
Oh no, he pops up throughout that was an ad lib. It's like, I'll talk to you soon. And then when he's traveling through it, I'm like, I'll talk to you soon. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, like Claptrap is so tragic to me. And have you ever seen Last Man on Earth?
Last Man on Earth, the movie, the Vincent Price Last Man on Earth, or
oh no, sorry, the TV show with Will Forte.
Oh no, I thought okay, we're two different Last Mans on Earths.
Yeah, I guess
no,
so.
I have not.
Or I mean, you can sort of The Office, right?
Yeah,
with Steve Carell, he's like, the awkward boss. He just wants people to like him, right? Like,
yeah.
But with, I think in Last Man on Earth, right? Like everybody's died off to something, right? A virus. So he's like the last man on Earth, and it's following him throughout this day that he's just by himself, or these years that he's by himself, right? Like talking to himself. His girlfriend is a mannequin, but not actually his girlfriend. Not even like he's nervous to talk to the mannequin. He's, like there's that stuff. I want to ask her out, and he's talking to these, Wilson, right? Like volleyballs and tennis balls. He's drawn faces on all these balls, and he's just like not had anyone to interact with. He's gone so far through this traumatic event solo for years and years to the point where he's like ready to kill himself, and then somebody shows up, and from there on, like he is so painfully awkward when he interacts with people, and people like kind of hate it. And he's not super likable for that reason. He's annoying. but like he's lived through this trauma. He hasn't had anyone. He's been talking to volleyballs and, all these things. He's nervous to flirt with a mannequin, right? Like he doesn't know how to interact with people anymore. I could relate to that during the pandemic. Like it was just me and my wife. Like that's all I interacted with for like a year, but I relate that to Claptrap. Sorry, that was a long story to say, like, because Claptrap has that same type of thing. Like all of the other Claptrap units dead. He was he shot in the pre-sequel and then like left for dead?
Yeah, he shot in pre-sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like Borderlands 2, right? Like he's alone still. He's been alone there for 2 years. I don't remember how many years it is between pre-sequel and 2. Anyway, like he's been alone there. He doesn't know how to talk to people. He calls you his minion. He talks a big game, right? Like
yeah.
But then he also has these amazing lines of, if I sound happy, oh shit, what is it? If I sound happy,
it's the default tone of voice. He's actually quite depressed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like that's one of my favorite lines, is because he's kind of miserable, but he can't express that, and he doesn't want to. I don't think he necessarily wants to express that either, but I don't know. Like that's more for you and the writers to say. But do you feel that like when you're voicing him and thinking about him? I feel like to some extent, right? Like you were talking about how he's part of the gang, but he doesn't realize it.
Yeah, there's times where, oh gosh, when he's building Victoria, it's like I didn't want him to sound like he's not building her. Some people thought it was like, oh, he's building like a girlfriend, like he's building a girlfriend because he wants to have robot sex with her. I didn't approach it that way. He just wanted a friend. Oh, it's just so tragic. Oh, I'd always hoped that in a DLC he would learn how to talk to her and maybe she would be like, okay, we'll be friends. But I don't know. But he actually, he does make a friend at the very end in the baby dance, that one mission, the last thing on the last Clapsless mission.
Yes.
Where he goes and 9 years later, the dancer, she's been paralyzed and she's in a wheelchair. And she's like, I can't dance anymore. And he's like, we just need music. And, cause he doesn't have legs. And so he's wheeling around and he dances with her. And he's like, I can't take her money. And it's just, he is a good boy. It's like every so often his big shot facade will like, kind of like he goes past it. And, that good boy deep down inside of Claptrap comes out. And that's why I think Baby Dance, is like my favorite mission from Borderlands 3, because he's like, it shows that he is good. He's just, it's a hard time for that to come out,
I totally see that and agree. And it's such a touching one. Like there's heart. I love those moments of heart in the games, right? Yeah, I love Claptrap. And maybe it's because I relate to him, being a nerdy kid and just wanting to fit in, but not really knowing how to fit in. And so sometimes I would just like act like other people in groups. So like I had a lot of kind of surface friends that I would interact with at schools. I wasn't necessarily bullied or made fun of, but I also didn't have like super close friends because I was afraid that if I showed the real me, I would be made fun of, I guess, or I wouldn't fit in.
No, I totally understand.
But yeah, it's that masking, right? Like I feel like Claptrap is masking.
Oh, totally. Claptrap masks, but he's doing a terrible job at it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I also feel like people. I don't know. I've never actually found him annoying, like voice wise or anything. Like I kind of get why people do, but I also think that a lot of people, it's that bandwagon, right? Like in Parks and Rec, there's Jerry, or The Office, there's Toby. I think there's like the one guy, right, that everyone just hates, and it's like, well, we don't know why we hate him. We just hate him, like
yeah.
And I almost feel like in Borderlands, it's very similar to that. Like, your main characters treat Claptrap like he's annoying and get annoyed when he says stuff and dismisses him or whatever it is throughout. And so it kind of conditions the player to feel similarly. But if Claptrap acted exactly the same way and all of the characters, the other, heroes, the Vault Hunters treated him not annoying, like loving him and laughing at his dumb jokes or whatever, like would we as players more often feel that same way towards him?
That's an interesting question. I don't know.
It's there's like the elevator experiment. One person's in there by themselves in an elevator. Bunch of people come in. They all face the opposite direction of the door. And then majority of the time, almost every time, the one person who isn't a part of it will turn around to match the crowd. They start feeling self-conscious or subconsciously be like, oh, am I supposed to face this way? So I just wonder if Claptrap could be more loved. But I think he plays an important role as he is, though. Sorry, that's my rambling on Claptrap and my love for him.
No, in my booth, I've got it was Twin Peach Company. They made these little fan omanju, they call them, like little squishy round versions of some of the characters. And I have a Claptrap one hanging in my booth. And basically, whenever in any creative line of work, you always get those. You always have those times where you're like, oh man, I don't know if I'm good enough for this. I don't know if you always, imposter syndrome, no matter where you are, will still creep up on you at certain points in time. It's if you're having like a slow period of time where you're not being called in for like anime or anything like that. But I'll come in here in all audition and there's my little round squishy Claptrap up there. And like, he's there to remind me, yes, you are doing this. You might not land, roles all the time, but you are doing what you're doing, and some people find you good at it. So it's like, he is my imposter syndrome shield. Is my little squishy Claptrap up here. I'm gonna give him a squeeze. There you go. Okay.
That genuinely made me teary-eyed. So that's incredible to hear, because I get the same way. I actually, on my phone, I have a review from one of our listeners that I always have pulled up in one of my tabs. And it's near the top of my like tabs, right? So that I, even though I'm not going to like read the whole review, but just the kind words they wrote makes me realize, like, we're not always getting feedback like every episode or between episodes, right? And so I feel like, oh no, I'm not doing a good job here, or like, is anyone even really listening, type of thing. And then I read those kind of reviews and it's like, thank you so much.
It's nice to know. It feels like I am contributing to society. People aren't getting enjoyment out of what I'm doing. It's like I'm brightening somebody's day,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
And I think Claptrap definitely does that. I mean, Claptrap's fun. And the other characters you do, like so many characters, Isic and all of the Battleborn cast, right? Like, I love Oscar Mike's lines. He has so many great lines that some of his are like almost a little bit rambly, where it's like he says something so like pop culture-y, or I don't know.
I know what you mean. He is like, when he talks about One Star to Live and how much he loves watching it. He quotes Bradathon, the male lead from One Star to Live. He's just, Oscar. Oscar and Claptrap would get along very well, and Oscar would believe everything Claptrap would say. Oscar is he is my other good boy. I'm telling you, I remember seeing previews for Wonderlands, and when I saw Paladin Mike, and I just saw Paladin Mike's helmet, and it's like, Paladin Mike is a Mike, and it's just, I was like, I got overly emotional when I saw that. And when I find out that Kieran Strange is voicing voiced Paladin Mike, and I was like, oh, bro, it was just, one thing that I like about the mics is that I remember, golly, there was a friend who, it was like in the early days of Battleborn, I've never had fans before, and I didn't know how to, I played Battleborn, and so eventually I just started playing with some folks in the community, and they've become friends over time. And it's like, were they fans? Were they just people that I started playing with? It's just, I just consider them friends now. But one of these people did like a shipping picture of Oscar Mike, and I can't even remember who the character was that they had shipped him with. And I guess they were getting like a bunch of crap on Tumblr for posting that. And I was like, here's the thing. Oscar Mike and the rest of the clones, they were literally created. And this is my headcanon here. I don't know if this is actually, but I mean, they were all created literally genderless because they were made to be, cannon fodder. They were basically mass produced to go out and fight and fight battles. And so why spend all the time on giving them actual physical gender when you could just program them to be like the bro soldiers? So, and clearly they learned this because Whiskey Foxtrot, the prototype, was created male, identifies male, is in a very committed relationship with Deandy. And, because that gave him, he's more emotional. He's got humanity. It's weird saying that about, the alien characters, but he's more of a natural brain, like an emotional. He hasn't been programmed. He wasn't programmed with the Mike programming. And he was too unpredictable. So that's why he was the prototype. And so all the Mikes, they weren't meant to live that long. And so the longer they live, the more they develop their own selves out of their programming. And so, I wrote this post. I was like, here, Mike does not know, he's just realizing that he has friends. And it's just, unlike the Mikes on Planet Mike, Queen Mike is female. And because it's like they're all physically, it's not what's the term? It's not a heteronormative society. It's like they're all genderless clones that have been mentally programmed as male. But then the longer they live, that programming starts to like wear off. There's still parts of it, but then they all basically realize they identify, and some of them are non-binary. Some of them are male, some of them are female, and they just all happen to sound the same, but they eventually all start to develop their own style of voice, like Chef Mike and Lone Shark Mike and Baker Mike. Baker Mike is Chef Mike. Anyway, and then Paladin Mike shows up, voiced by Kieran, and we know Lore's story of being assigned female at birth, Lorelei, and then you learn about Lorelei playing Paladin Mike as male, and then eventually in New Tales from the Borderlands has transitioned to Lore, and it's like Paladin Mike is this beautiful connection to Battleborn of basically finding it. And it's like, and it's just, I remember Kieran for his birthday, I got a Paladin Mike pop for him because it's like, bro, you are welcome on Planet Mike anytime. It's just, I want to get a print made of like Oscar meeting Paladin Mike. And I think it was Dante Silva, because I was going to have him just a cartouche, a voice balloon of Oscar Mike saying bro, and then Paladin Mike saying bruv. Gosh, I need to get that made. But yeah, it's the Oscar's, for me though, Oscar is perennially, he's always going to be, he's very childlike. He loves his cats. He's terrified of spiders. He's a little kid. I call him a kimono friend with a gun. He wants friends. He writes poems. He's just, he's a cinnamon roll, using the Onion terminology. Cinnamon roll too good for this world. Oh. He's I love Oscar. He's just, if he was real, I would just give him a big hug. I love him.
It's that sweet innocence about him, right? Like he is made for war, he's made for battle, but there is that like just that sweetness with him, that innocence that does come through. And yeah, I genuinely love that. So, and part of that goes to you for, voicing him properly, of portraying that kind of depth, I think, to him.
Gosh, there are so many more stories that could come for those characters. And
I know,
man.
I've been thinking that this whole time. I'm like, geez, we could spend like 2 hours just on voice. I mean, easily 2 hours on anime, 2 hours on Battleborn, 2 hours on Borderlands. We could spend that easily, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you get to be involved much in the writing of these characters as it goes on, kind of?
Not really. The closest I think I ever got was when Sam was moving from Boston to Dallas, when also at the same time writing Oscar Mike at the Battle School. And he had not had a chance to familiarize himself with Whiskey Foxtrot yet, because he was basically writing the other characters. And he asked me, it's like, hey, what can you tell me about Whiskey so I can dive into his character more to write these scenes for his, his appearance in the. And so I had the whole idea of them not understanding, the Mikes not understanding his relationship with D'Andy, because they have no idea, it's like they ask, what do you guys do all the time? And, it's, essentially leading to, they have no idea how reproduction works, how like two genders with reproduction, because they all just come out of a vat with no gender at all. And so he has to explain this to them. And so I kind of wrote a thing out, like a basic framework. And that is one part. Sam, he had to make some changes to make it fit into the rest of the story. But the dialogue, I never thought I'd be having this conversation. That was something like literally I had written down, and he put that in there. I had one thing where it's like he gets like a Raina calls and says, hey, when are you coming back? And he's like, well, you did. And this is when I had no idea how budgets worked. And it was like it was only budgeted for like one voice actor. That's the whole joke about the Clonstitution having only one voice actor. And I was like, Raina calls, and then he's like, you tell Arendi to stay away from my Sentoku knife, and it's and you just hear like Arendi in the background and like pots and pans clattering and shit, it's and I was talking about like he's a chef. He's a self-taught chef because he was relegated to KP duty at the UPR. So he really likes food. He wants things to taste, and then he wrote that he wove that into the whole thing with Chef Baker Mike talking about anyway. But the whole thing about trying to explain the birds and the bees to the clones and them totally not getting it, that is the closest I ever got to actually like flat out writing anything for Gearbox. And even the whole thing with him being a chef, that was a fan canon that came from some people. There was fan art of Whiskey wearing an apron saying "Kiss the Chef," because fan canon was like they read that from his lore about KP duty and how he's like, they saw him as the self-taught chef. And I thought, that is brilliant. You know what? For their privacy, I'm not going to say their name, but they actually ended up working at Gearbox for a while. But yeah, they had this great fan art. Of course, I don't know if they sell art, but Left Circle had this amazing art of like the rogues, and Whiskey is like, he's got this apron on. And I thought, this is amazing. This is them living on the Nova when they're not fighting. And I just wanted to bring that into and that fan canon became canon. He's the chef for the rogues, and he bakes stuff, and he like always tries new things. I love all these characters so much.
I feel that. Like, I know that they did somebody, right, a fan did the is it called Reborn?
Battleborn Reborn, yes.
Yeah.
So yes. That is installed on my computer right now.
Nice. Yeah, and I know that like PvP isn't active on there, right?
It's not active on it. They're the programmers is working on it. It's basically just reverse engineering and rewriting like stuff that doesn't exist.
Right.
I remember firing that up, and the first thing I did was like, oh my gosh. And it's do you have?
No, because I had it on Xbox, and you can only do it on the PC, I think.
Yeah, apparently there are still Steam codes that you can redeem.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can buy them from Amazon. If you go to the Discord, if you go to the Battleborn Discord, which is basically you can purchase a Steam code, and it puts it in your account, and you can still download it.
Oh,
it was so crazy because I fire it up, and it's interesting because the way it's like there's a weird back end front end thing that Guag is the modder that he had to create. And so you load in as Mike, and then you have to wait while some modding stuff is happening, and then poof, it changes to your selected character in the level that you select. And I'm right there in the algorithm, and it was like I started crying. I was like, oh my God, this is back. It was the game means that much to me, the whole thing. And it was like, I'm playing by myself. There's no gear, but I'm back in the algorithm.
Oh my
and
goodness.
It was yeah. It's still being worked on, but it's really something. It's really something.
It's so cool that people are passionate about it, because for a long time I just thought, like, am I the only one? Like, I had my friend that we played Borderlands and stuff together, and he loved the game too, but like, I feel like he moved on, and I don't think I ever moved on. What do you record on?
Physical equipment?
No, like software.
Oh, software, Reaper. I will say there's a bit of software called Isotope RX, and I learned about this from the audio engineer, one of my commercial recordings. And essentially, the spectral waveform, it's like, instead of just like the regular zigzag waveform that you see, the spectral waveform is basically how loud everything is in certain frequencies. And so you might see it. It's real pretty. So let's say you're recording a line, and then your cat happens to meow like right outside your door. And man, that was such a good take. So in Isotope, you'll see the spectral waveform. Here's where all of your voice is, and you might see there's like a streak where you see that like in the higher part of the frequency. So think of it as like Photoshop. You can erase that part of the frequency in the spectral waveform where the meow is, and it keeps everything else in the rest of the frequency. So you're literally erase the meow out of that. You can erase those weird nasal pops that you get sometimes.
Yeah.
You can erase a screaming blue jay outside in the tree outside your window. It's really good at removing, say, like a fan noise or anything like that, and computer and line noise. Yeah, Isotope is it's really amazing.
I have several Isotope plugins that have been like lifesavers, but I don't think I've seen one, or at least used one, that will take out that kind of thing. Do you know which plugin it is?
Well, the Isotope RX is the program, and they have like you can get the elements, which are the plugins that you would get for like your DAW.
And that's what I use.
And I use the standalone because it's a lot easier, because you can just bring the whole file in there, and you can physically paint things out. You have your mouth declick.
I use that a lot.
In the old days, we used to have to eat apples. I never did that.
Does that help?
I actually tried it once, and yeah, there's something in the apple structure of the juicer. I should look that up and read what the science is behind it.
Okay.
But it breaks up the mucus and the sticky stuff in your mouth. But man, if you had to do that for like an entire session, you'd be eating a lot of apples.
Yeah. Well, you taught me about milk, and so I try not to drink milk at all before a session. This was in our discussion before, when we were planning we were chatting about, for people who don't know what we're talking about, for Wonderlands, I am also the voice of the goblins, and in the audition side, in the audition description, to be as disgusting and gross and nasty sounding as possible. So I drank milk before the session, and it just makes your mouth smacky and sticky, and I got right up on the mic so you could hear all of those mouth sounds. And this was when we recorded the entire thing from home, because it was during the pandemic. And it's like, yeah, I just was drinking milk during the session, and gosh. And it was just so nasty. I don't know how much of that actually ended up coming through the Goblin voice processing, but I like to think that on a subconscious level, you hear all that mouth smacking, and you're just like, ew. Yeah, I don't know if I played after I learned that. Like, you had posted, I think, about that.
Yeah.
I actually started my replay of Wonderlands last week, so I haven't gotten to the goblins yet. But now I'm like, I have that in mind, and I want to hear it. I want to hear if I can hear that milk come through. You
might hear it in the dialogue with when you have to go up and you have to either romance the guard or the Jens. Jens is the one who's in the cage, and he's screaming about anarchy and fighting the system and stuff.
Yeah.
That's I'm also Jens.
I'm gonna write that down so that when I get to it, I can really focus on that. Well, it's funny too, because we did like a spicy adventure. Mr. Torg, wanted us to go to his Granny Flexington's farm for badasses, and it's like they make hot sauces. This is a one shot I wrote for us. And so during that adventure, we would take spicy damage, and you would have to eat increasingly hotter hot sauces, right? Like the hot ones, interview style type thing.
Like while y'all were playing, you were eating the hot sauce.
Yep. Yeah.
Yikes.
But I prefaced it for everybody, like, if you can avoid drinking milk, do that, please. Because like, it's already going to be a hard enough edit for me. And adding in like the milk mouth clicking stuff, I think would push it over for me. So nobody drank milk, but it was a lot of fun. And editing out certain chewing sounds and stuff was interesting, because you still want, like, I still wanted part of that in the episode.
Yeah.
But not to the point where I have misophonia, where like certain sounds trigger me, right? Like it's like nails on a chalkboard type of thing, right? Like just puts me on edge.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those chewing sounds totally do that, or drinking sounds. And so I had to, like, what wouldn't trigger me? What a tricky editing session that I chose to do voluntarily. So, all right, sorry. We'll go back to a couple things. Let's talk some advice here. This one is for me, because I lovingly get teased by my fellow castmates and listeners as well. When I get put on the spot, you've played D&D.
Oh, yeah.
When I'm BMing, bunker mastering, sometimes they're just like, well, I want to go talk to this random person over here. And so I'm like, well, good day. How are you doing today? Like, just come up with a voice on the spot. No thinking at all. I just start talking in a weird voice. Whatever comes out, comes out. But then what listeners may not hear is that sometimes we'll have like a 5-minute side conversation about something going on. And then we'll go back to talking to that same character, and I'll be like, well, hello there, how you doing? Like, my voice will change. The accent, the character changes a little bit. So I get lovingly teased for this all the time. Is there a trick that you do that helps you remember? I mean, even I feel like this is the wrong person, because, man, you can just like summon up those characters real quick that you did, so many years ago. But is there a trick?
The only reason why I can jump into, Battleborn characters and stuff is because I was doing them for so long. And even, gosh, and again, this is me picking apart my own performance. You can hear early PvP Isic is slightly different than Toby's friendship raid Isic. It's because the characters kind of developed over time. In the early days of like the Elder Scrolls games, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of text in those games, you'll hear an actor say one half of a sentence, and then in the same scene, because they had a rewrite, they'll say the second half of the sentence, and it sounds completely different. And you could tell that it's clearly recorded at a different time. Like going into Crunchyroll to record a show, I always like to hear, let me hear reference, or I will either hear reference, or I will literally listen. I'll have the previous episode streaming in my car while I'm driving in to record, so I can hear the character and make sure that I'm hitting like all the same vocal ticks and sounds, because I always call it that Elder Scrolls effect, which, and again, this is not anything negative on Bethesda or Elder Scrolls now. This is just going back to, like, I remember when I was a kid, way back. Oh my gosh, was I a kid when Oblivion came out? God, no, I was already a full-fledged adult when I was younger than I am now. But it's like, you could tell, and like if you're watching Project Runway, and you could tell when they have pickups, that they play, and it sounds completely different from how they were on stage.
Yeah.
I always say that it's always, we're going to talk about, the rules, and then we're going to go back to on stage. I will always want to sound as similar as possible. And so I will do everything I can to match those from before. I remember for the Borderlands DLC, for Borderlands, I record Claptrap at a certain pitch because they have to pitch him up, so I can't go too high. But when you're playing the game, you hear him in that much higher range. I learned this from Battleborn. Oscar Mike and Whiskey Foxtrot are recorded at the same octave, for lack of a better term. And then Oscar Mike is pitched up, and Whiskey Foxtrot is pitched down to show their differences in age. But because they're clones, they have the same voice. And so when I had to go in to record that DLC, I had to be sure not to pitch myself up, because I can speak in those ranges. They decided to change their pitches after we had initially recorded. So because I'd been playing Battleborn so much, I had to go back and listen. Thank God Aaron Lindy sent me some of the audio files, the raw audio files from the sessions, just so I could hear them. And I put a bunch of the Oscar Mike lines, burned them on a CD, or I can't even. Anyway, and so I could listen to them in the car on the way to Gearbox to record. So I wouldn't go too high, and I would stay in that mid-tone clone range, because when you hear how you sound in the final version of the game post-processing, I could actually hit that. And I had to basically, nope, you stay here. here's where you go. And I had to do the same thing with Claptrap for the DLC, and I did the same thing for Wonderlands just so I could make sure I don't go too high.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it's basically, man, doing it live in a podcast. I don't know if you have like a replay what you just did, like right before you go back to recording. Yeah, I mean, I would say basically, listen, where was I? Okay, and then like go back into it. There's Jeremy Lee was talking about in an interview about Cyberpunk to keep V. Yeah, Jeremy Lee, voice of Gage.
Yes.
In Borderlands. But yeah, she's the voice of V, and they had her basically say the same 2 lines in the beginning of every session. I think one of them was like, I think I'll have the ramen today was one of them. And it was, and basically just to get back to where the character was the previous session. And I thought, that's really good.
I do that with Claptrap because I do Claptrap on our show. Occasionally there are Claptraps in our Bunkers and Badasses game. So whenever I do Claptrap, I'm always like, hello, traveler. That's what I do to get into the like pitch and tone and like attitude, right? And then we have another character that's Amir. In my head, I always envision him, and it's not an actual impression of Pedro Pascal in Game of Thrones, but that's how I picture him a little bit. But he's essentially our Marcus. He's our arms dealer. So he's very, jovial, and to get into his character, I just always go like, hello, my friends, how are you? So sometimes I'll cut out me saying those things, and sometimes I leave them in. That was going to be my next question, actually, are there lines that you use to help you get into character?
It's more like what recording, I will read through the lines before we start recording, in character. Even so, even though I listen, on the way there, it's like I like to hear the reference literally right before we step in, and I will say whatever the reference is at the same time, like right after, to match it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I just match whatever reference is played for me. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's where I was.
Can we hear your Claptrap? Unmodified?
Okay, let me turn this down. Okay, where did the SSL2? I think I had him down here. I'm gaining down.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Well, let me tell you something, because Claptrap is basically me just being very, very loud. And then sometimes he may say something like this, and then I'll just machine gun a bunch of words afterwards.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Sometimes he'll go like up, like really high, just like to pop that in there, just so you get a little bit of that screech. And there's depending on the situation, what he's saying, his delivery, it's kind of like studying a dialect, like the signature sounds. One of Claptrap's things is how he'll be slow, and then he just belts out a bunch of stuff like this. But the thing is that you can't slur when you speak, when you go from the slow talking Claptrap to then talking really, really, really. See, I just screwed it up because you have to, when you go from the slow to the really fast, you have to keep it enunciated clearly.
Yeah,
which is easier if you got the lines there in front of you. Where it doesn't say, they don't tell you where to do that. It's just where does it feel natural for him to say like that. And I kind of picture him. How is he moving? How's he talking? I actually noticed it while recording Borderlands 3, is that I have a tendency to move in the booth the way I figure my characters would. And it's strange because you have to stay on axis on the microphone for because if you don't want to get off axis. And so my whole lower body is moving. And I noticed that, when I was recording Oscar Mike, I would kind of stand, Oscar kind of sounds like this, and he stands. Yeah, he kind of stands how he does in some of his taunts. And with Claptrap, I am constantly moving around the way I picture him, like balancing on a wheel. I realized that's why my calves are so sore, because I keep my legs kind of planted. I keep my legs planted so I don't go too off axis. Yeah. But then my whole body is moving, and I'm moving my entire body, but keeping my legs planted. My calves are usually super sore after a long session.
That's amazing. I've heard that kind of tip for like game masters, right? Dungeon masters for D&D and stuff. I think Matt Mercer talks about that, of like becoming that character, right? Like if it's an old man, hunch your shoulders, and really just like encapsulating what they visually look like, even if it's just for audio. So that's cool that you do that, that it probably happens somewhat naturally when you're like really into character.
Yeah, it's there's sometimes I've played older characters in stuff. It sounded like there was a boom outside. I wonder if there's a backfire from the person mowing the lawn, or I don't know. But it's I would literally have to sit down. Like if I was going to write a book on acting or anything like that. I would have to really sit and think about what it is that I do, because while I've analyzed what I do for character creation to teach a class, the rest of it is just you kind of feel what it is that you're doing. I've learned from, I've taken classes and stuff like that, and it's kind of just like a mishmash of all that blended together, and it's
and it's something that you build to, right? Like you figure out what works for you, and because maybe moving around a bunch for other people are like, it might distract, right? That might be too much for them.
Yeah, it's there's so many different. I mean, I'm constantly learning new things. So Joel McDonald, again, director of Borderlands VO, right now, the voiceover lord, as is written on his business card. He wrote his book on acting. It's Getting In, and the subtitle slips my mind right now. But no, I got a chance to read an advanced copy of it before it went live, I guess you could, or what
went to print
before it went purchasable.
Yeah,
and it was like, because I've been acting for 20 years, doing VO for 20 years now, but I always like to learn more. And I always like to see other people's techniques and because I always feel that if there's any point in time where you think you are the best at something, there's going to be somebody out there that's doing something different or better than you are.
Oh yeah.
Because you can always learn. You are always learning. You can always learn more. And I'm like reading his book. I'm like, oh. I was just like, wow, it's a good book. If anybody wants to get like some insights from somebody who's really good at what he does, pick up Joel's book.
Yeah, check that out.
Yeah.
One last thing, Bunkers and Badasses. You've played it, right?
I am aware of it. I actually have a set, but trying to group people together is hard. In a weird way, I kind of do, because Dante Silva, part of the Gearbox narrative team, is our dungeon master I've been playing D&D with him since Battleborn.
Oh wow!
We've gone through several campaigns, and when your DM is a video game writer, you get some fun stuff, and it's just it's fun. Some stuff from our actual games has made it into Wonderlands.
Oh, nice!
I had a Warforged named Landbreaker. He was a scout. He was like a skirmisher, and so he was fast. And so that's, he's clearing the way out. Landbreaker, he's 17th in the line. Landbreaker 17. And so one of the spells that causes the earth to split in Wonderlands, if you hear the player go, Landbreaker, like that specifically is a reference to my character, Landbreaker.
Oh, wow.
There is one of the facial things. There's a big handlebar mustache, the Monte Carlo, I think it's called. That is in reference to our party's magician, Carlo Monte Carlo, who we were like his acting troupe that basically supported him in his mind. He was like the front, that he was how we were able to, we're just here in the service of the great wizard Carlo Monte Carlo. And Carlo literally thought that we were all of his bodyguards and watchdogs and stuff like that and everything. Yeah. And Heather played him like a complete doofus, and it was just so much fun. Dante basically planted all these little things in Wonderlands based on our D&D sessions, and it was so fun to like. I will say in Borderlands 3, when he's teaching Zero how to play Bunkers and Badasses, and he goes, "I roll for stealth," and that is in direct reference to a member of our party who was like this kleptomaniac rogue who would always everything. I roll for stealth. And that just became a thing in the party. And so as soon as I read that in the script, I'm like, I am saying it exactly the same way. So yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. That's so cool to hear. I love that, you have those friendships, right, at Gearbox, and that there's those like kind of inside jokes essentially, right? Like make it into the writing, and it's not even like you had to be there to get it type of thing. A lot of them are just fun, and
they put them in there to where they would work. Like, I mean, when you see a handlebar mustache called the Monte Carlo, it just sounds fancy.
It does, yeah.
You don't have to know where it comes from. It just the Monte Carlo. It just fits.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I love that. Well, wonderful. I have so many more questions we didn't get to, but that's okay because I had a lot of fun chatting with you. But I know you need to go.
Yeah.
Do you want to plug some stuff though, real quick?
You can follow me on Twitter, or It's so weird saying X. It just sounds so
I know.
weird.
I try not to say it.
Yeah, Twitter. Jim Foronda. That's where I interact with people the most. I do have a page on Facebook, Jim Foronda voice actor, and I do have an Instagram, but I'm kind of like, man, I can only focus on one social media platform at a time. And I pretty much just, I'm on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm going to be at Nishi Fest in Dallas, Fort Worth on April 20th and 21st, which is, it's very soon.
This should be out before then.
Yes. And there's stuff under NDA that I so desperately want to talk about that I cannot. But I will say, Trapped in a Dating Sim on Crunchyroll. If you haven't seen it, it kind of became this runaway hit because people thought, man, this show looks dumb. And then the premise sounds so strange, but then it was like, some people liked it and they told two friends and they told two friends and so on. And it became this runaway hit. And so they've already announced a season 2. And I'm just so desperately waiting for that. I'm waiting for them to say, okay, it's ready. Here's when season 2 is happening. But they announced that I guess they're animating it now. So I'm just waiting.
Oh, that's exciting.
Waiting for Dating Sim season 2. Yeah.
I heard you talk about that on another podcast, and I was like, I really want to check this out. So I think my brother has a Crunchyroll account. So maybe next time he and I are doing like a paint night when we paint miniatures and stuff. So maybe throw that on.
Cool.
Well, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks again so much for joining us or joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. You are welcome on anytime.
I just like hanging out with people. So yeah.
Is there anything else you need on here before we close out, or?
No, I think we're good. This has been great. I like talking to folks that are into the same stuff. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And yeah, thank you.
I always go, bye.
Goodbye, travelers.
Yeah. Perfect. Yes.
That I will say before I go,
yeah,
that actually, I did throw that in there. It was an ad-libbed Claptrap line from Handsome Jackpot with Goodbye, Traveler.
Oh.
You can't hear it because all the Claptraps are screaming at the same time, but that is in there.
Thanks for listening, badasses. I hope you enjoyed this chat with Jim. He is an absolute blast to chat with. We've definitely talked about him coming back on and maybe even playing Bunkers and Badasses with us. During our chat, we brought up a couple of things, so I'll sum up some of those that you should check out after this. We talked about Battleborn Reborn, so if you had that or want to buy it on Amazon, you can play it again. It's possible. We also talked about Joel McDonald's book, Getting In, an Actor's Guide to the Greatest Gig There Is. And then if you're in Dallas, Texas, then you can learn from Jim and other folks in the voice acting industry. He teaches one class in a 4-class series at Iolite Studios. You can see more info on that on their social media, and then you can email them to sign up for that class. You can find links to the Battleborn Discord, Joel's book, info on the class, and Jim's Twitter in the episode description. If this is your first time ever listening to us, thanks for joining us for this, and we welcome you to listen to more. Our show is normally an actual play podcast using Bunkers and Badasses, which is an actual game made by Nerdvana Games that's like Dungeons and Dragons, but Borderlands, Assault on Dragon Keep, but an actual book that you can play and make characters and have your own adventures and go wild. In FFAdventureCo, our 4 Vault Hunters take on quests in a homebrewed world that's filled with mayhem, action, comedy, and some surprising moments of heart. The early episodes may have some rough audio, but that improves throughout. I always highly recommend giving it 3 episodes because it just gets better and better as we go. And episode 3 has some absolutely hilarious moments that if you aren't laughing, then you know that the show isn't for you. So I hope you'll check that out. And for those that do listen to the show, the Crit Awards are open for nominations. It's a peer-driven award show that aims to recognize indie content creators in the tabletop RPG space, and we would hope that you would consider nominating us alongside many other amazing folks in this space. There'll be a link to the nomination form in the episode description. And no matter how much you've listened to the show, if you've listened to all the episodes, none of the episodes, you're welcome to come hang out with us in our Discord. You can also follow us and interact with us on social medias at FFAdventureCo. We love to hang and chat and have a good time. We also have a Patreon where you can become an ultimate badass by supporting us there and gain access to exclusive episodes like Granny Flexington's Badass Farm for Badasses, where the Vault Hunters take on a job for Mr. Torg to make hot sauces, and the players and I are actually taking hot sauces throughout the adventure. And you can hear me as I take hotter and hotter hot sauces start to panic. And then most recently, part 1 of numerous parts came out of Honey Heist. Ian Moss, who is the lead designer of Bunkers and Badasses at Nerdvana Games, he also plays Drake Wilson on our show from time to time. He is running the Vault Hunters plus my character Plunger through Honey Heist as Drake Wilson. It is meta. It is amazing. Honey Heist is in the B&B source book, and it's written by Anthony Birch, the writer of Borderlands 2, and you can definitely feel that in it. Plus, Ian does such an amazing job bringing it to life. So part 1 of that is out on our Patreon, and more are coming every month. You can find links to our Discord, socials, Patreon in the episode description, along with all those other links that I talked about. I'm really enjoying chatting with folks with Borderlands ties and getting some insight that we can apply to playing TTRPGs. Of course, voice acting, that can be applied to every session that you play and enhance it. So I hope that this chat was insightful for that. A couple of weeks ago, we had Josh Caro, who is the in-house composer at Gearbox. He did the soundtrack for Tiny Tina's Wonderland and is surely working on future stuff right now for them. You can go back and listen to that. That was really cool and really insightful to hear how he does music for video games, as well as some behind the scenes type stuff for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I definitely want to do more of these chats. So if there's anybody that you want to hear on the show, I can try and reach out to them and see if they'd like to come on. If you are somebody that worked on the Borderlands games and would like to come chat, reach out. I would love to chat with you. No matter what your role is, I think it would be interesting to chat and kind of learn about it and see how we can apply that maybe to TTRPGs, because I think there's a lot of crossover that we can learn from there. All right, I think that's it. Next week, the adventure continues with our Vault Hunters. So until next time, badasses, the best preparation for tomorrow is doing something badass today.
Vault Hunter, I'll watch your back if you watch mine, Vault Hunter. Those bandits better run and hide. You got your 20-sided die. Sparkle in your eye. You got your guns. Let's get some.
Goodbye, travelers.